Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome. It is time to get our Learn On. Thank you for joining us today on this Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Our topic today, think that you're a good listener. Guys, I hate to tell you this, but you're wrong. The good news is that we are here to help. And looking on the screen here, superiority illusion, also known as the better than average bias. It's the reason why so many of us think that we are actually better at listening than we are. Deep listening is so much more, has so many more layers than any of us can think of. So we want to talk about this today. I have my guest, Michaela Ayers, who is the founder and facilitator over at Nourish. She and I met in a community platform. I loved her energy. I loved her eloquence, her heart to nourish. Love food, can you tell? When it comes to nourishing the soul, nourishing our mind. So Michaela, welcome, and please share with our audience what it is that you do and how you help people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm so grateful to be here, and thank you for people in the audience. So a little bit about my work through Nourish. I really help leaders and creative thinkers communicate and collaborate more effectively. And I do that by providing coaching, workshops, training spaces, really just helping people really ground into those core skills, or a lot of them related to communication, which I feel like is so much of how we connected, Tatiana.
100%. That is absolutely our common bond here in the communication, no doubt. And you wanted to give some shout outs to folks in the audience. Michaela, thank you for saying that. We have Kaylee in the house, we have Ben here, we have Marcus, and some other people watching. So welcome everyone to this conversation. There is an article, I posted it in the chat. I also shared how you can connect with Michaela in the chat already, pinning that post. But let me ask all of you listening, and I want to ask you, Michaela, also, how do you know that you're a good listener? Michaela, what are your thoughts? How does a person know that they are a good listener? And for those of you who can type in the chat too, let us know your thoughts. What makes you a good listener? How do you know that you're a good listener? What do you think, Michaela?
Yeah, well, I think of being a good listener as an identity that's not taken, but really given to you by the people around you. And by that, I mean, do people affirm that you really hear, you listen well, that you value their stories, that you give them space to share their unique experiences without judgment? I feel like you're a good listener when someone is willing to come to you, share their struggles, share their worries, ask for your advice. I feel like those are the ways that you can know if you are a good listener or not, just by the willingness for people to connect and engage with you on that deeper level.
Absolutely. I agree with you. But this is an interesting point that you're bringing up. It's not a title you can give yourself. It's really one of those things somebody else gives you that lets you know that you're a good listener. So that is an excellent point. And I want to share what Sarah commented here in the chat where she's sharing with us. You process what the person is saying, respond to the points they made, instead of waiting for the person to finish to talk about your perspective. So Sarah, thank you so much for your comment there. Appreciate that. And Marcus shares, if I can stop talking myself. Yes, Marcus, we are definitely going to talk about that because for those of us who love to connect, that is an issue that we certainly have. Now, the article, because I love bringing great content and sources to you. Michaela, you and I both read this article from Harvard Business Review, What Great Listeners Actually Do. Now, their very first point that they made starts with sharing 3 misconceptions that most of us would define as good listening. So let's run through what these 3 are. The first one is that they don't interrupt. The second is that people give both verbal and nonverbal cues that they're listening. And the third misconception is that they repeat back. So when I read these, I think, yes, these are most definitely a part of listening, yet they're calling them misconceptions. So what are your thoughts on these 3 misconceptions about listening?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, starting with the first one, don't interrupt. I feel like this is a kind of a very first level, basic level of politeness that we offer to someone who is sharing their story with us. Of course, not interrupting them. But I think it can go a level deeper in terms of it not letting the inner chatter, the thoughts that surface in your mind, not letting that interrupt the attention, the focus that you're offering that person. And I think I hear that in so much of what in Mark's comment in terms of not interrupting, but also learning how to tame that inner voice that's already trying to notice what similarities you have with this person, or in what ways do you see themselves in your story. So I feel like not interrupting, we can take that a little bit deeper to think about our internal narrative, our internal chatter here, when it comes to the quality of listening that we're offering to others.
Yes, and Kaylee actually shared in the comments, yep, not letting that inner chatter interrupt your focus is so essential. And many of us struggle with that. I think Marcus was hinting at that when he said that he can't, if he could stop talking himself. Now, if you guys are like me, you're so excited by a good conversation that you're ready to chime in. You're ready to make those connections. Like, yes, me too this, me too that. But I trained myself over time to be silent, to resist the urge to share back. I mean, it's not about being silent the whole time. Of course, you want to make contributions, but let the person finish expressing themselves fully before you're ready to chime back in. So what I think the article is saying here, and what you're summarizing, Michaela, is that these are misconceptions, not in the sense that they're wrong, but in the sense that they're limited. They're not showing the full picture. There are so many other layers. And so I know you would like to share now, getting to our next point. We covered our first point, these 3 misconceptions. The second big idea in the article is the 4 essential behaviors of great listeners. And I know you want to run through what these are for our audience. So I'll kick off the first one for you. Periodically asking questions, right? And then why don't you take over for the other ones?
Yeah, I think the point around periodically asking questions, I think one of the signatures of being a generous listener is letting there be space for a pause. And letting it be awkward. I know sometimes it's like, I want to fill the space with something. That's often that impulse to say me too, or this is like this other situation that I've experienced. But instead, letting that pause linger into curiosity, in terms of what question might emerge to maybe ask this person to go deeper, or is there an opportunity for me to find some deeper meaning in this story? What question might unlock that? So periodically asking questions to affirm and deepen your understanding, I think that's a really great behavior that signals that you're listening on a deeper level. The second point here, in terms of offering safe and positive experiences that affirm that person, it's so important to affirm the value of someone's experience. And when I say that, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree, or that you have to it's not offering a judgment, but just even noticing, like, I can tell that this is really emotional for you. Like, thank you for sharing. What you're sharing is really valuable. Those little types of, those little moments of recognition really are so important in building trust and boosting that person's confidence. Again, we want to signal to them that we're somebody who they can trust. We're somebody who cares about their well-being, their livelihood. So the little things that we can do to affirm and support, really important, really great muscle to flex. Our third behavior is being cooperative and not competitive in debate. And so I think what I mean when I say cooperative in communication, I think, in what ways can you, again, add value perhaps to what they're saying or sharing, in terms of maybe picking up on some key words that they've maybe used several times throughout that conversation, to show that you are being a cooperative listener. As just as much as they're pouring into you, you're also pouring back to them by really picking up on the values or the things that really are resonating with you, in terms of sharing that airtime. And then fourth and finally, giving suggestions, I would take this one with, I guess, again, in that spirit of generosity, asking, in what way can you like help or support? Are they in need of advice and suggestions? Or is your lane really just to be a good listener for them? I really try to stay away from unsolicited advice whenever possible. And so when the conversation does meet its kind of organic place of wanting to brainstorm or wanting to find solutions together, I often ask if that's where we're at and if that's what they're looking for, not assuming that I have wisdom that they don't have, and also not assuming that perhaps they're that they want to move into solutions. So just take a relational approach to this last piece in terms of the suggestion giving, again, leaning into that cooperative skill, to make sure that the conversation is flowing organically into the place that they're looking for it to go.
Absolutely. And we have tons of comments in the chat that I want to share with you, Michaela. And first one, Marcus is saying, if someone asks for advice, let them find the answers within themselves. Mm-hmm. Ben says, listening is like a muscle I'm very weak at. Marcus then says again, that's why I prefer face-to-face. On the phone, pauses are more awkward, right? Different preferences, different modalities. Sarah agrees with Marcus. Sometimes we get so distracted on the phone that we can't process what the person says, and we end up having those awkward pauses. Mm-hmm. Kaylee agrees, for sure that these things happen as well. Let me just get her comment on the screen.
Yeah.
It's easier to tell if they're thinking or processing or what's going on for them if you can see them, so it makes it less awkward.
Yeah.
And as I listen to these 4 great behaviors of great listeners, I wonder, I can't help but reflect on myself, which ones are coming naturally to me, which ones are hard for me. So I'd love to ask you, Michaela, to reflect on this too and hear from people who are online right now listening. Which ones, even if you just put best and the number or hardest and the number, we'll know, which ones seem to come fairly easy to you when listening to others? Which ones seem to be a bit of a struggle? So what would you say for you is the one that you're the best at, Michaela?
Well, I'm going to say asking questions because I'm a very curious person. So questions are something that's come easily for me because I'm very curious. And so I feel like I'm really able to lean into that curiosity as a listener. And I think on the other side of that, I think one of my gifts is ideation. One of my gifts is kind of imagining solutions. And so sometimes I can move too fast into the suggestions, into the solutions. And so I really have to catch myself when I'm in that mode, because like we heard in the chat, letting their wisdom unfold is really, I think, a signature of a good listener. Asking them what immediate ideas are coming up for them versus transitioning into my collaborative process. I think that's the thing that I'm most practicing right now.
I agree with you. Those things, I would say the ones that I'm most naturally bent towards is as an encourager. I think number 2 comes very natural to me. I'm very conscious to create a warm and welcoming ambiance in that conversation, a nice space for that person to really feel like they can trust me, that they can speak openly. I know that that's something I offer in my own personal relationship. So curious what you guys would say. And even if you can't comment in the chat today because you need to think this through, spend some time reflecting, read the article, come back to the video. Which ones come naturally to you? Which ones do you really need to work at? I love a good analogy. The article compares being a great listener to a trampoline, in part because of the energy, the momentum, the lift that being with a good listener gives you. And I think there's also some bouncing that can happen there too. So I love that analogy. And after going through the misconceptions and then these 4 great behaviors, they actually now talk about 6 levels of listening. So when you think about, I never really have stopped to think too much about levels other than like hearing, processing, responding. But they go into these the authors, which by the way, the authors of this article studied, I want to say it was almost 3,500 leaders and compared ratings of average listeners to excellent listeners to come up with the results of this. And so that's how they came up with these 4 different behaviors of great listeners and these 6 levels of listening. So the first level is creating a safe environment, which we kind of touched on a bit in that second point. The second one is clearing distractions. So for those of you guys who are quality time people, if that's your love language, you know how important not having distractions around is in your interactions. The third is seeking to understand. And that one totally reminds me of the 7 habits of highly effective people, because one of the principles is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And then the fourth one is to observe. This person will observe nonverbal communication. Number 5, increasingly understands the other person's feelings. And I love the increasingly part, because it's almost like as the conversation continues, then we start to really understand other people's feelings. And then the 6th behavior, the 6th level, asking questions and clarifying assumptions. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and responses. And maybe we could even share some examples of what listening is like in this environment, in great listening spaces. So let me know what you think. And please, those of you in the chat, let us know, what are your thoughts and responses to these levels of listening? Where do you think you might be at when it comes to levels of listening? Michaela?
Yeah. Well, I think I want to jump in on this create a safe environment piece, because I think, right from the beginning, laying that foundation is so important, whether we're in a one-on-one setting or in a team or class setting. So as a facilitator, as the person with the intention to open up a safe space, so important to think about what norms really need to be in the room in order for this to feel like a safe space for people to participate in. And so group agreements is one way that a facilitator and people who hold that space reinforce the kind of group behaviors that are expected in that space. So an example of a group agreement that I use often is share airtime. That I want to make sure that people who perhaps are more introverted, or perhaps people who English is their second language, we want to provide a generous space where people who process a little bit slower or just need a little bit more time, for them to also be able to step in and participate in the conversation. So that's a really great example of a group agreement that can support that kind of intention, so the intention to create safety. I think there's another element to it as well, in terms of an awareness of your own biases and an awareness of perhaps what triggers you. Because, of course, when you're coming in contact with different people's realities, there may or may not be information in there that hooks you and reminds you of an experience that you've had, perhaps reminds you of an experience where you didn't feel valued. And so just having that inner climate of safety, I think, is also a really important intention here. Like, are you in a space where you can listen well? And if you're not, then just be mindful of that, in terms of your ability to show up and be present for others. So thinking about safety as, of course, the physical space, the environment, the place where we can practice certain behaviors together, but then also tap into yourself and really try to be honest with yourself of, do I have the capacity to be this person? Like, do I have the capacity to hold space for another person right now? And then if the answer is no, just be honest with that, be honest about that, versus, moving forward and perhaps not meeting your own expectations.
And sometimes those little moments are very small. Someone is talking to me and I might have to say, and I have said this for sure, I'm sorry, my mind was somewhere else. I wasn't listening. Can you give me 30 seconds to send this message, and then my attention will be all yours. Sometimes it's just a small thing of like, I need to just finish this so that I can fully concentrate. And I've practiced learning to say that out loud to people. I want to hear what you have to say. Give me 30 seconds to finish this, and then I'm all yours. Things like that in a small way. But then, like you're saying, also the big things. The bias, I think we can have an entire separate stream. on the bias piece itself. But like you said, to at least begin to be aware of those biases. And I want to just share a couple of things from our chat. I want to give a shout out to Lion, Just One Question, who's here, Christine Wang, who's joined us too. And Christine's comment is, I feel like pausing and moments of silence to contemplate or time to respond back are something daunting and awkward, so we keep on talking instead. And she brings up a great point, right? The awkward pauses. For some reason, we're so uncomfortable with pauses in conversation. So something we seek to fill. But I can tell you for sure, Christine, if you want people to openly share and feel comfortable, pausing is an excellent strategy, especially if you want them to talk more. Just sitting there and listening, people will open up that door for more conversation. And then just one question, Lion is joking with us, saying that he's the best listener ever. Lion, I'm curious what your wife would say to that statement right there. Let me know what she thinks. And Kaylee's comment, when a listener is on all 6 levels, it feels so much safer to share and be vulnerable, and there's less defensiveness in general. And mm-hmm. I 100% have to agree with her on that. And a level 6 listener is a phenomenal person to be in a conversation with. Kaylee also loves that internal check-in that you talked about. Kaylee's YouTube channel, she talks a lot about this content as well, so I know she's on board. And thank you. I'm glad you liked that little comment that I made there. And Ben's comment is, myself, I think I'm adding to the conversation, but many people feel I'm interrupting and not being a good listener. And Michaela, curious what your response to something like this is, because I know people have such good intentions and want to chime in, but it can come across as interrupting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I might be curious what that looks like in practice for you, Ben, when it comes to you feel like you're adding, but the feedback that you're getting is that you're interrupting. I guess I'd be curious what that looks like in a play-by-play. And I think maybe there's an opportunity to do a little reframe in terms of, one, allowing them space to share, not interrupting. And maybe there's an opportunity to say, I'm just so excited about what you said, I have to share. And just leading with the value, like leading with why you feel so compelled to share, I think could help balance that out a little bit, to just kind of shift the perception that you're interrupting, and instead you're excited and you want to add value. So I would lead with that, like lead with the intention to connect before your share, just to signal again that you are, providing them attention, wanting to get to a deeper relationship with them, and that's why. There's nothing more powerful than sharing the why behind something. So that might be something that you try.
And I'd also like to chime in and say that not everyone's brain is wired the same way for mm-hmm. processing, for listening. And I don't just mean personality types. I even mean things like how a person with ADD can impact in a conversation. And mm-hmm. I think for me, one of the best gifts is knowing when a person is, again, creating that safe environment where a person has let me know that ADD is a part of how their brain works. It affects how their brain works. And so I know to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more understanding about the intention of the disruption. Because I don't know what it's like to have ADD and to have your thoughts swirling around in your head and you're trying to contain them to come across as a good listener. So just to acknowledge the diversity, the neurodiversity that exists in communication, as well as culturally too.
Yeah. I really appreciate you naming that. And I think it's important to be aware of the invisible identities that we all hold. And so we can't assume that everyone is processing on the same level. And something that I'll share is I am an avid note taker. So when I'm having a conversation with someone, it helps me to write down my thoughts. So if I don't want to lose track of something that directly relates to what they said, then I know I have some place to put it for whenever that pause does arrive organically. So that might be another just opportunity for somebody who like, I want to share this. This is something important that's relevant to this person. Something as simple as keeping a pen and paper nearby really, really helps. And just kind of another place to channel those thoughts, or, any nervous energy that you might have. Just letting that be a tool that you use to support you as you're listening generously.
Thank you. Love that. Listening generously. Being generous with our listening is great. It's a season of generosity right now, too. Zach, welcome. Zach is saying that these 6 levels definitely take mastery. I know that for me, observing nonverbals as well as understanding, asking questions, all in the same conversation can sometimes be overwhelming. And and I agree. And we don't always have the mental energy, the capacity to do it all, but this is our goal. This is what we want to aim for, because this is why it's called deep listening, right? It's not called light listening. This is deep listening for those moments where we want to develop, nourish, nurture that relationship. And Sarah's liking the clarifying assumptions as well. Let me just get her comment on here. Clarifying assumptions. Sometimes she's quick to assume the worst from what someone is saying, but I know it's often taken out of context. I think this goes back to learning about how to listen. So yes, Sarah, you just need reminders sometimes about these things. And Kaylee's comment, love that. I'm so excited about what you said. I have to share. Let's see, Sarah's comment here. Knowing someone's personality is key. However, we have to go through rough periods of communication in order to begin to understand the other person, which I think is okay. Yeah, I mean, I was just saying in my public speaking class yesterday, we're talking about teams, high performing teams, whether it's a team of 2 or a team of 20. It's not that they're conflict free, it's that they know how to handle the conflicts when they occur. Want to say welcome to Nick Torres. Glad that you're here today. Amazing topic. Hope all is well. Always great to see such productive information content with great speakers. A true pleasure. Thank you so much for the love. Ben also shared a little love in the chat. Kaylee loves the comment about listening generously, and Ben agrees that your comments were well said. So thank you guys for all of your wonderful participation in the chat. We absolutely are loving that. And so we talked about our 3 big points, the misconceptions, the characteristics of great listeners, and then these 6 levels of listening. Now I want you guys to think about, who are the great listeners in your own lives? Who are the people that come top to mind when you think of great listener? You feel seen, you feel heard, you feel understood when you're in conversations with them. Who are some of those people for you? And you don't have to name any names if you don't want to in the chat, but who are they to you? What's an adjective or 2 that you would use to describe them as a great listener? Michaela, who's somebody or people who come to mind for you that really exemplify or personify what it means to be a great listener?
Yeah, I think the first people that come up for me are, members of my family, which I feel really grateful for. I feel really listened to by my siblings, my brothers, my sister, and these are people that I also have happened to know the longest. So it feels really like such a blessing to feel heard and valued by my family. So those are some of the people that come up for me right away. In terms of just the space that I'm given to express myself and to be received in non-judgment. I think those are the things that I think of when I think about them.
Absolutely. And how wonderful to hear that for you, top of mind are family members. That's beautiful. I know many people where actually they have the most difficult communication with their family members. So glad to know that maybe you come from a long line of amazing communicators and listeners in your family as well, which is fantastic. I mean, for me, my inner circle of friends come to mind right away. And until we talked about this, I don't want to say I took for granted their listening skills, but I didn't verbalize or even really think through how part of the reason that I feel so great around them is because they really listen. All of these things we talked about. When we talk, I know that they're not distracted by other things. I can tell that I can be having a bad day and be open and honest, and they're okay with that. They're willing to pop in some suggestions without telling me what to do, but still being willing to offer something that might be helpful. Sometimes it's not offering anything that is the most helpful too, but I just really want to say thank you. Thank you to my friends for being such wonderful listeners, because as I reflect on the feelings of being in those conversations, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It is safe. All of those things that the Harvard Business Review article is talking about. And Kaylee has chimed in and said that for her, her partner's an amazing listener. He's great at being present with undivided attention. So I love that, Kaylee. That's wonderful. Be sure to let him know, and I'm sure you do. I'm sure you're great at expressing appreciation. So today, guys, on this episode, we've talked about deep listening. Summarizing what we've gone over today, there are some misconceptions about what we think of as good listening, and the misconception is that they're incomplete. There's so much more, like we talked about. 4 awesome characteristics of great listeners, and then these 6 different levels of listening where we set up a space for people to feel heard, understood, to be valued, and cared for. And then we had you think about who are those great listeners in your life. So I have an invitation coming up for you in just a minute or two, but I want to let you know how you can connect with Michaela. I pinned it in the chat as well. You can connect with her through her website, nourish.community. She's also on LinkedIn, Instagram, and she has a podcast as well. All of those things are connected on her website, so please do check that out. And Michaela, what's something you want to share with the audience, a wrap-up sentence, something that's on your heart to share with them about your own organization and our topic today?
I would say the thing that's coming up for me based off of our conversation is that, people really long to be listened to. I think, in general, there's nothing to me more valuable than giving someone our undivided attention. And because time is our most precious resource, right? It is our most limited and most valuable gift. And so when you have that awareness that this is something of real value, my time, my energy, my attention, it is just such a beautiful way of showing care and concern for another person. So I just really, I appreciate this opportunity to talk about listening as one of those really important skills. And I take that into my work. I think so much of what I do as a facilitator in diversity and inclusion related spaces is being a really good listener and being a person that asks really good questions. And so that really informs so much of my practice when it comes to designing workshops or coaching my clients or creating experiences in general, is because I'm really motivated by human connection. I'm really looking for opportunities to get different types of people together, having conversations about what matters to them. And so if that's you, if that's something that you're interested in, I would love to stay in touch. And so, yeah, don't be shy. Please say hi over on my website or on Instagram or on LinkedIn.
I like that. Don't be shy. Please say hi. Love a nice rhyme. And you're getting some love in the chat too from Marsha. Thank you for joining us, Marsha. And Kaylee also just nods of agreement here for the content, and want to share a little bit about keeping in touch with me. And we'll be right back on with Michaela here. But for our next show, today is a special stream, doing this on Tuesdays because of the Thanksgiving holiday coming up. But you can join me here Wednesdays at 12 noon for a midweek power hour. Sometimes it's a power half an hour, but sometimes between a half an hour and an hour, middle of the week, to help you gain more confident communication skills. And we talk about it in terms of being confident and caring to help you in your personal journey and your professional journey, school, home, work, wherever you are connected in your life one time. So please make sure that you do join me for the next show, where we're going to be talking about boundaries, especially as we have a lot of things coming up around this holiday season. And you might be saying yes a lot, you might be saying no a lot, but join us to have a conversation. Come on and join me to talk about, do we need to say yes a little more often, or do we need to be saying no a little more often? Which one is going to help you the most get through this holiday season while taking really good care of yourself as well? And if you like the graphics and the content that you saw today, Ecamm has made it all possible for me. It's an amazing platform that allows me to be the producer of the show, running the graphics, running the camera, while also talking to you. So I will post my affiliate link in the description if Ecamm is something of interest to you. I love the community, and I honestly cannot say enough great things about them. So it is Thanksgiving coming up, Michaela, and I love food, and your company is called Nourish, so I just can't help but ask you, what is the thing you're most looking forward to eating on Thanksgiving? What's your favorite Thanksgiving dish?
Well, something you got to know about me is I have a very serious sweet tooth. So
Mmm,
I'm excited about pies. My favorite pie to make is sweet potato pie. And so I
yummy.
look forward to making it. I look forward to eating it. And then also, whatever other pies people bring. So we got, the apple pie, the pecan pie. I'm really just trying to get to dessert usually when it comes to things. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, we have a restaurant in this area. I'm on the East Coast in the United States, and there's a restaurant that serves dessert first. So hey, maybe you can switch it up in your family this year and say we're going to do dessert first, followed by dinner. But I'm with you on that sweet potato pie. I love sweet potatoes in all forms. I personally have to avoid dairy, wheat, and soy, so that limits a ton of stuff. But the good news is I get to explore how to make these things on my own. So for those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, I want you to enjoy, to love it, to really spend some time. We have a deep invitation for you. Use this time, Thanksgiving season, whether it's at your office parties, with your friends for Friendsgiving, or with your families and loved ones Thursday or throughout this weekend. Practice using these deep listening skills. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you walk away from this Thanksgiving not only having a full belly, having all this great delicious food and sweet potato pie, but having the people that you love say to you, thank you for listening. That meant a lot to me. I really needed that. Those of you who are here, I know it's because you're lifelong learners with a big heart and you care for people. Practice listening today, not so much talking as much as practice listening. And please take out your cell phone, take out your computers, your laptops, and send a message to that person that you thought of today, or those people that you thought of today and identified them as great listeners in your lives. Please say thank you. This is the season of appreciation, but it doesn't have to only be for Thanksgiving. Make this a regular practice where people stand out, people have contributed to your life. Say thank you. Send them a quick little note. Share this video with them. Tell them that they really came to top of mind when you were asked about great listeners. Share this content with everyone in your world who you think could benefit from content like this. And of course, please give this video a thumbs up if you got some value out of it, and share it in your circles. I would love your support in helping to grow this channel and helping get the content out to as many people as possible who need to grow in their communication skills as well. So from Michaela and I want to wish you a beautiful, happy, wonderful Thanksgiving. Michaela, any parting words for everyone joining us today or listening on the replay?
Mm. I would say that when you're listening, you're learning. So, what more can you really learn? We know everybody who's on the line here is a lifelong learner. So, when we're thinking about being in that receiving end, we're really downloading so much valuable information. So, that might be a helpful reframe for anybody out there.
Oh, I love that. And I think we should put that on a t-shirt. When you're listening, you're learning. I love that, Michaela. Really great tip. So everybody, thank you so much for your participation and your comments in the chat. Reach out to those great listeners. Enjoy this Thanksgiving season. And I'll see you next Wednesday for a conversation about boundaries. And we have a few comments in here, Lion did like our little poetry skills that you said there. All right, very good. Sarah is excited to learn about boundaries. She says, help me learn to say no. Sarah, you got it. We will do that next week. Ben, thank you for joining us. He likes the Power Hour. Marcus, happy Thanksgiving to you as well. And Kaylee, thank you so much. So everyone, happy and wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you for your time today. Michaela, thank you for being here with us also as well. And I want you to enjoy all the pies in 2 days that you get to have and love.
Yes, thanks for having me.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.